Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to go over the VFR flight planning procedure that I use when planning a longer cross-country trip. I have to fly to Southern California again from Central Valley, California. Normally when I fly to Southern California, I stop at Bakersfield Muni Airport. Flight planning that section of the trip is fairly straightforward. But what I want to look at and focus on is this second portion. It's the most interesting for me because there are challenges that I need to overcome. Okay, so we're going to start out. I use ForeFlight. I have the Performance Plus subscription that allows additional features. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to land at Bakersfield Muni, and where we want to fly, our destination airport is going to be Brown Field in San Diego. So I select Bakersfield Muni, Lima 45. I'm going to scroll down to the San Diego area, and there's Brown Field right there. Hi, Piper. All right, here's Brown Field Muni. I'm going to go ahead and select that as well. And you'll notice at this point, ForeFlight has created a single leg to this flight plan. Now, you could fly this direct in a general aviation aircraft, perfectly legal, but there are going to be some challenges to that, and sometimes flying the direct course is not necessarily the correct thing to do. In my case, flying a Piper Cherokee, I only plan to be about 7,500, maybe 9,500, everything under 10,000. So, we have multiple routes that we can take. Number one is I like to fly kind of what I call the back route, which is over Palmdale. You come over the desert and you go down the Cajon Pass, fly over March Air Force Base, French Valley, and then you come down in here to San Diego area. You could actually extend that out and go into Palm Springs or down into El Centro. You can go out east towards Arizona, multiple ways to go. You can also fly the coast route. I don't typically fly that just because there seems to be some marine layer, some of the weather. There's a lot of congestion here in the LA area, a lot of air traffic and lots of special airspace, not to mention down here in San Diego. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly to the Grapevine, and if I click on the flight leg and drag it over, releasing it somewhere in that area, on the right hand side you'll see the nav aids that are predefined in most, if not all, aviation GPSs. Grape is the waypoint or the nav aid that I like to navigate to because the mountains around the Grapevine, Gorman, the Cajon Pass, those mountains are lower than the rest of the Sierra Nevada, so it makes it easier in a smaller airplane to go over. Next, I aim for Santa Clarita. There's an amusement park out there, but also right where the I-5 starts to come into the LA area, there's a VFR checkpoint called Newhall Pass. I select that, and that looks pretty good. That is a route that I take a lot, and that I feel very comfortable with. Now the question you may have is, okay, now I'm down in LA, how do I get around? How do I avoid airspace? How do I avoid the mountains? What's the best way to go? Well, I use another tool that is available in ForeFlight. It's also available in paper form. It is the VFR Flyway chart. I call this chart the Lord of the Rings chart because if you look at the mountains, they look like the Lord of the Rings maps. But this map basically strips off a lot of the topology, and it gives you still airspace, airport information, and it will give you VFR corridors that you can fly. There's departure and arrival notations, so you can see where the aircraft are coming in from or going to. those are going to the major airports, and so we want to try to avoid those as much as possible. But you'll also see the light blue areas, which are VFR flyways, and you can fly along this. Also notice that there's notation in there that gives you altitude information. So in this example right here, they are showing that you have to be above 5,000 feet. There's some other areas where they say below, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So I'm gonna go ahead and just connect the dots and say, I'm gonna hit this VFR checkpoint here. I know I like to go to Santa Anita Racetrack. It's an easy landmark to find, and it is a VFR checkpoint. And then I'm gonna go down to the Pomona VOR. Let's go ahead and select that. Now this route so far is basically paralleling Highway 210 in the LA area. If you are familiar with that area, this is the area near Bob Hope. It also goes through Pasadena over Jet Propulsion Laboratory near Ontario. So we're gonna go ahead and fly that. That looks good. I'm also gonna go ahead and select the Paradise VOR just because it's continuing in that southwest direction, which is the direction I need to go to get to Brownfield. And then at this point, we're pretty much out of that area, and we have lots of options to go from here. If you look, I could go direct to Brownfield, but we have this area we will have to contend with. This is restricted area for Camp Pendleton, and depending on the airspace and if it's operational, we may or may not be able to go through it. We're going to assume that it is not going to be available to fly through. So where do I go from here? Well, experience tells me French Valley is a great airport to stop at. I'm going to go ahead and select that. French Valley has services available. It has mechanics on the airport grounds. There's restaurants, there's rental cars, there's lots of resources and services available. So we'll use that, even though we're not going to land, we'll use it as a waypoint, and it will also become an alternate airport that we can use if we need to divert. One of the areas on the chart here that I avoided was the areas indicated with the circles. There's a parachute drop zone, and there are gliders in that area, which we will be clear of. But I recommend all VFR pilots, if you are flying near a parachute drop zone, you all know that we don't want to interfere with those operations, so we get routed and vectored around it. Not a problem. But whenever you see a glider on a sectional chart, that indicates that the area could be windy. There are prevalent winds in these areas, so that's just something to consider, not to mention the glider traffic itself. Okay, so once we go to French Valley, we're going to turn direct to Brownfield, and then we notice that we're okay up until we get closer to the city. And I'm outlining the Class Bravo. It's marked in blue. Class Bravo is around all of the international airports, the large international airports. And in this case, we have Miramar, we have the Naval Base, we have San Diego International, Gillespie Field, Montgomery. You've got all kinds of Imperial Beach down here. I know through experience that we can go around this Bravo. I could request a clearance through the Bravo and go straight direct as shown, but that would be the cherry on the top because it would save us a little bit of distance. If that happens and we get clearance, we would definitely accept it and fly through the Bravo, and we would follow ATC's directive. But for flight planning purposes, I'm going to pick a point out here. I know it's called Chief. It's another nav aid that I use quite often. Okay, so that now keeps us clear of the Bravo and the restricted areas. And then we will turn towards Brown Field, but now we're going to have to go under a couple of the shelves of Class Bravo. Again, if we get cleared through the Bravo, that's just the cherry on the top, and it will help us get to our destination quicker, more efficiently. But I'm going to assume that we're not going to get clearance through it. So I'm going to tighten this up a little bit by selecting Duga, which is another nav aid. And that flight plan looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the VFR flyway. And as a pilot, I would now scroll through this, checking each of the points, each of my waypoints, looking at any of the airspace that may be conflicting or any of the terrain, the mountains. This looks good. The only thing I have to do is make sure I fly over these airspaces or around them in the LA area. And as we come in, we will be east of San Diego, northeast of the airport, and we will just come under the Class Bravo and get handed over to the Class Delta, the tower at Brown Field. I like this flight plan. So now what we'll do is we'll click flight plan in for flight, and this shows us a tabular form of all of our waypoints that we had put in on the map. So those correlate now. So let's take a look at the profile. Click the profile, and this shows us 4,500 feet. We take off on the left-hand side, Lima 45, all the way to the right-hand side, Sierra Delta Mike, which is Brown Field. And you see that we've got some conflicts with the terrain. So there's some conflicts with the mountains, and then there's some airspace conflicts. Those are the Class Charlies, the magenta ones that you see here. Okay, well, 4,500 feet. I was kind of planning this trip on 7,500. That's what I normally like to fly when I go down there. So let's go ahead and adjust that. And that looks really good. I can see that from departure airport. We are clear. We clear the foothills, got plenty of distance between us. We're over the Class Charlie. We're under the Bravos. That's great. The only conflict I see is as we come into Brown, we could cross some of the Bravo shelves. So we got to make sure we get under those. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and select Chief. So I'm going to go back to Edit, grab Chief, and I'm going to select the bottom one, Set Altitude. We're going to cross Chief at 4,000 feet. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back to the profile. Look at that. So now we've stepped down to 4,000 feet at Chief. ForeFlight calculates this area right here, which is the top of descent, which we will begin our descent, and we will calculate that to put us at 4,000 feet when we cross Chief. That looks good. We're going to be under the Bravo shelf, but when we get to Duga, we are now in the Bravo there. So we're going to have to be below that. So let's do the same thing with Duga. I'm going to select Duga, set the altitude, speed, and time. We're going to cross this at, let's go at 3,000 feet. And I'm going to show you where I grab those numbers here. Look at the profile, much better. Now we're going to step down below the Bravo, and the only airspace we will really need to get clearance into will be the Class Delta here, and that we'll be talking to Tower at that point. So this looks good. We will be talking to ATC this whole time. So air traffic control will be giving us VFR flight advisories, looking for traffic, helping us route around. So we may have to vector around some areas around traffic. That's just the deal in flying. So be prepared for that. Now those two altitudes, the 3,000 and the 4,000, I'm going to go back to the flyway chart. And if you look from Chief, I selected 4,000. And the reason why I did that was right here, it talks about flying along that VFR flyway 4,500 and below, and that will keep us under this Bravo. And that's about it. Then at Duga, we're going to be 3,000 feet. So you can notice this here, it says below 3,500 feet, and the bottom shelf of that Bravo is 3,500 feet here. So we'll be right under it. And that's confirmed on our flight plan profile. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense. That's my way of planning a trip like this. Obviously this was quick. There's a lot of thought that goes into these cross-country trips and their planning, but I like this one. This looks great. The next step would be to get the weather and to make sure I have my alternate airports. All the information needs to be available, and that will be in another video. I can show you that. But this looks good, and this is what I'm going to fly. So hopefully if you find this helpful, give me a like and subscribe, and thanks for joining me. Have the good rest of your day.